Let's break some taboos.
Before Art Tatum, Ray Charles, and even Stevie Wonder, there was Tom. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Indy, and I am super excited to bring this video to you. It is a little longer because I had to do more research, and I have a special little interview in here. If you stick around, you will learn something. Hopefully it will ignite a conversation, not just about the forgotten heroes of the past, but also about Black artistry and how we view Black artists even today. This video is talking about Blind Tom. Born into slavery in Georgia, Columbus, Georgia, in 1848, his master, or his enslaver, Wiley Jones, once considered him to be a worthless runt and wanted him sold by the dozen, or even dead. At 9 months old, Tom and his family were put up individually for auction. Even though this turn of events was indeed a tragedy, it did change around, because they were luckily all bought together by General James Bethune, thanks to the tenacity of Tom's mother, fittingly named Charity. Now, as a slave on Bethune Farm, he started acting quite peculiar, doing almost anything that he could to make any type of loud noise or sound, i.e. banging pots, banging pans, stomping on the floor, going outside when it's a rainstorm. He was both highly sensitive to sound and not. He indeed loved sound. Sound enveloped his whole life. Now, as a toddler, his love for music began to develop, especially at the piano. This love for music was so great that his enslaver, General Bethune, just could no longer ignore it. Tom was eventually moved into the big house, or the house where his enslavers lived, and treated quote-unquote better than his family as well as his enslaved counterparts. This is really where we begin to see a musical prodigy in the making. So let's get into it. By the age of 6, Tom could repeat anything that he heard on the piano, after hearing it only one time. Crazy. Wow. He became an instant smash hit. At 8 years old, Tom's life kicked into high gear, and he was sold to showman Perry Oliver, who dehumanized Tom as a freak of nature, or as he called, a gorgon with angel wings. He did this well because he was racist and didn't care really about Tom's needs or his humanity, but also as, unfortunately, a very effective marketing tool to show the taming of the beast, so to speak. So it unfortunately worked, and Tom was seen by society as both this talented natural genius as well as this freak of nature. Tragic.
Everybody thought Tom was startling, and the rubes out and throughout the South and throughout the country was willing to pay their nickel or whatever it was to go see Tom, as long as he was advertised as this blind seventh wonder of the world and all of this stuff. As long as he was promoted that way, he could get over here.
I think the reason they found Tom to be so unique, let's think in terms of American blacks, what people of that period had witnessed. They witnessed blacks as slaves. They witnessed the portrayal, particularly if they're Northerners, of blacks in minstrel shows. To them, to many a white Northerner, if they saw anyone perform that was of color, it was either a white person in blackface doing a very stereotypical portrayal, or a black person having to do a stereotypical portrayal based on a white person's stereotypical portrayal. That to them became then what the American black community must be like. So Tom, even within that realm, was uniquely different than what they had seen.
According to Deirdre O'Connell, the author of The Ballad of Blind Tom, America's Lost Musical Genius, Tom would begin his performances by, quote, twitching and rocking back and forth and back and forth, with an almost blank expression on his face, and then, all of a sudden, like magic, he began to change his demeanor, change his posture, and play the most beautiful piano playing that anyone had heard. Now, since it's the present day and we have more hindsight on human behavior as well as mental illness, this behavior could be attributed to the fact that Tom was autistic. And many individuals on the autistic spectrum tend to behave repetitively in order to reinforce a sense of order and system, to avoid any type of anxiety or disorder in their life or in the world. As you can imagine, the world is full of disorder. And so we could see this play out with the life of blind Tom. Now, what is autism? Let's get into it. Autism, or Autistic Spectrum Disorder, ASD, is a mental disorder that has common attributing factors. I'm not an expert on autism, please bear with me, but I definitely want to at least give you my 2 cents so that you get a better context of blind Tom and his life, so bear with me, please. Going back to autism. So, many people with autism or with autistic spectrum disorder might have abnormal posturing or facial expressions, or not necessarily know when to express those expressions in public or in society. Many people might have an avoidance of eye contact, or also a developmental delay of some sort. That could be learning or speaking late or not even speaking at all, as well as extreme sensitivity, as I mentioned before, whether it's to the elements or to people or to loud noises, as well as a repetition, as I alluded to before as well, repetition of speech or of movement or of, doing something over and over and over again to instill order. Now, according to autismspeaks.com, there is not one common type of autism. Autism is still being learned about and studied to this day. There are many subtypes, as well as Asperger's syndrome. If you haven't heard, I'm gonna take these off. So ways to cope could be routine. A lot of people with autism tend to get very anxious if their routine is broken, because that instills order, as I said before, as well as an absence or removal of any loud or intrusive noises and loud and intrusive disturbances. This can also heighten the anxiety. This could also ruin the order, as well as engaging in a special interest of some kind. And we see this in Thomas Wiggins' life because he was really interested in the piano. He was interested in producing music and sound. This can also be part of his repetition because he allegedly played every day for the rest of his life. So continuously getting on the piano, being very invested into this one thing, definitely could have helped Thomas Wiggins manage his anxiety. However, in the case of Tom Wiggins, we must explore the enigmatic world of the autistic savant. Now, or someone that has high-functioning autism. Now, what is that? Autistic savant syndrome is a form of high-functioning autism where the individual is mentally disabled, considered mentally disabled. However, they are able to demonstrate exceptional abilities, whether it is in the arts, music, writing, math and science, etc. And usually these abilities are far greater than what humanity or what is humanly capable. Stephen Wiltshire, MBE, who is a British artist known to be able to draw landscapes completely from memory, even seeing it once or a couple times. Phenomenal. You have to check out his work. He was knighted by the Queen. We also have Daniel Tammet, or Tammet, I don't want to pronounce it wrong, but FRSAA. He is an author as well as a very well-known autistic savant and intellectual. Ellen Boudreau, who is a female also blind, pianist and autistic savant. She is known to be a complete genius when it comes to the piano and still fascinating people to this day. Leslie Lemke, who is as well another male blind pianist, and he was known to not talk for the first couple of years of his life. In fact, his parents thought that he would be a mute and sit down and not be able to really accomplish much with the life that he had been given. Miraculously, one day, his mother, according to his mother, he began to sit down and play the piano as if he had known it for all his life. And then he began to sing. His mother had never even heard him utter a word. But when he sang, it was as if, honestly, God came down and intervened on this man. Take a listen. Now, this almost godlike ability and brilliance bestowed upon Tom gave him the ability to practically be a musical genius of his time. However, he could barely sit still or utter a word to people. And unfortunately, this could also be attributed to the fact that he was locked in a hotel room for most of his life. Whenever he went on tour, he was locked alone, had minimal to no contact with the outside world other than his employers and his managers, enslavers, let's be real. He was constantly controlled and manipulated. This could also be contributed to the fact that he was a black enslaved person in the Confederate South, but I don't know.
Yeah, the South's gonna rattle again.
Tom's talents eventually led him even to the White House. And this is a pretty amazing story because he ended up playing for the then President James Buchanan in 1860. And this, many people speculate, might have officially been the moment that the first black musician was invited to and successfully played at the White House that we know of. Period. So, you can thank Tom for that. During the American Civil War, Tom composed the popular tune, The Battle of Manassas. This is honestly Blind Tom Wiggins' magnum opus. This is what a lot of scholars and people who have heard of him know him for. However, at the tender age of 14 years old, he created this piece, and this beautifully haunting piece definitely showed the true genius of Tom and his mastery of quote-unquote sight sound. This ability to, and remember Tom was blind, this ability to take a snapshot of the battlefield through senses. This was a very popular tune, as you can imagine, amongst the whites, due to Perry Oliver basically marketing this song as an ode or a love song to the Confederate South. As I'm sure you can imagine, black folks weren't really too keen about it. So. But post-Civil War, Tom began to become a household name. He was really known, and at least his artistic abilities were respected amongst the public. He even got accolades from famous American writers like John Steinbeck as well as Mark Twain. He said it in a wild way, but we can really get at least some insight into how amazing this man really was. Moving on. Though Blind Tom was wildly popular and sought after by the public, there was still the intense racism of the time that labeled the virtuoso as an idiot, that labeled the virtuoso as a fool, or blatantly called this man an animal or a brute. The dehumanizing remarks and sentiments towards him were coincidentally debunked, plucked, and thrown out the window, honey. Because once he demonstrated his amazing savant talents, his ingenious talents, and supremacy to these people that were listening and paying to listen to him while at the piano, oh, it was over, baby. It was over. They ate their words, literally. Quote by Deidre O'Connell, "He hovered somewhere between a respected concert pianist and a glorified sideshow freak." And I think that that definitely encompasses the duality as well as the enigma of Thomas Blind Tom Wiggins. His managers kept him locked up alone in his hotel room, night after night after night. This isolation left him more and more distant from the public and society. In fact, he was socially stunted when it came to other people, as well as concepts like money, property, and as you could probably imagine, how much did people take advantage of this man? With the emancipation of African American slavery in 1865, Tom found himself still under the total control of his white enslavers, and I wonder why. Remember good old Massa General Bethune? Well, when he died, his son, John Bethune, took over ownership of poor Tom. John B. No, not that John B. John B. was not a nice man by any respects, who spent almost all of Tom's almost $5 million gain at that time on himself. He was allowed to do this because Tom was unfortunately declared legally insane in 1872, allowing the Bethune family to take further and further advantage of this great man. John B. was killed in a freak accident more than about 10 years later in 1884. Sad. What a tragedy. Anyway, Tom would not be able to see his freedom, unfortunately, until 1887, with the news headlines marking him as the last American slave. His final years were nothing short of a mystery. He basically went into obscurity, many people thinking and believing him to be dead. However, he surprised everyone when he made a short comeback on stage, along with the Black Vaudeville circuit. Unfortunately, Thomas Wiggins had a stroke at the age of 60 years old, which left him partially paralyzed with his hands. As you can imagine, this was very tragic for him. Music really became Tom's life force. He didn't have really any contact with anyone else in the outside world besides his enslavers, so music was really his outlet. On the night of his death, he was allegedly sobbing at the inability to play the piano anymore and distraught due to his stroke paralysis. According to legend, his last words were,
"I'm done, all gone, missus."
Just like that, Blind Tom Wiggins was no more, and he was buried in an unmarked pauper's grave, never to be seen again.
They literally
this man's life, and he knew nothing about it. And his people were, they were without power to do anything about it, but to watch. Like as we did it, what it brings to light is this: how many great musicians were lost to the slave field? How many great doctors? How many great lawyers? How many brilliant actors? How many brilliant politicians, because they displayed some sort of intellectual ability, were killed or stripped or put out into slavery? How many? This is one man that slipped through the crack. How many thousands did we lose?
Remember good old Massa General Bethune? Well, his daughter, Fanny Bethune, decided that it was about good old time to show old blind Tom the respect that he finally deserved. Well, even in death. And after a failed attempt at getting Tom's body moved to the Bethune family plot in Columbus, Georgia, he was allegedly buried in a nearby plantation, another pauper's grave. Fanny girl, I'm just letting you know that it was the height of Jim Crow o'clock. So what were you thinking, girl? Anyways, rumor has it that the cemetery in Brooklyn, where Tom was originally buried in the pauper's grave, Brooklyn, hello, claimed to have documented proof that stated that Tom Wiggins' body was indeed never moved from the original pauper's grave that he was buried in. However, to this day, many people still believe that his body was moved to a plantation in Columbus, Georgia. And there are still 2 separate plaques, one in Brooklyn and one in Georgia, that both claim to be the resting place of Blind Tom Wiggins. Crazy, right? I think it really speaks to the enigma that this man truly was. Oh, thank you so much again, guys. I really enjoyed making this video. It took longer than I thought, but I really wanted to get the research right. I feel as though Blind Tom is a phenomenal musician, was a phenomenal person. This man indeed deserves a name. He deserves to be recognized. He deserves to get the respect that he had always deserved. Nonetheless, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share this. If you enjoyed this video, I really appreciate that you made it to the end, and hopefully you learned something about this amazing man. And if you did, please let me know in the comments below. And if this is on YouTube, subscribe, share, comment as usual. If this is on IGTV, please share and comment something that you learned. I'd really like to know. Please don't ever forget to be independently you.
Be independent, be yourself, don't be no one else. Let's talk about your body. Be independent, be a star, just be who you are. Let's break some taboos.